Hey guys, Mr. Kyle, Myers Mathematics, and let's just jump right into it. This is a worksheet on the midpoint formula. So when they say the midpoint formula, they literally mean like the whole formula, which happens to be not too crazy. Sometimes the way they write it in textbooks makes it look a little crazy, but what you do is you take x1, which is this guy, and you add it to x2, which is this guy, right? So basically you add up your x's, and then you divide by 2. Now, the reason why sometimes the formula might look a little bit intimidating is because if you write out the whole formula, then you would have, and this is a comma right here, then you would have this, right? And that's a lot. That's a little bit more stuff, right? But and then of course if you do this, and it's like, oh, that's mx comma my. Maybe you've seen that as well, mx my for the midpoint, right? So there's a lot of different ways they can write it in the book, but basically the midpoint formula is, are you ready? It's the average. It's the average of the x's and y's. It's just the average. The average means you add them all up and divide by how many, which actually, if you use that logic, you could find out the midpoint of 3 points, or 4 points, or 5 points, because it's still the same thing. If you want the midpoint of any amount of points, you add up all the x's, divide by how many there are, and then add up the y's and divide by how many of those there are. So it's always the same. And actually, the reason why I bring that up is because if you wanted to, you could take the like a bunch of different points. Like let's say you wanted to figure out um, what would be like a good hangout spot for you and all of your friends. You could take your points, your like points on the Earth. Like look it up on Google Maps; it'll tell you what the coordinates are. And you take those coordinates and you add them all up in a calculator, all the coordinates, divide by how many there are, depending on how many friends you have, and then take all the y's, add them all up and divide by how many of those are, and then it would tell you exactly what point is between you and all of your friends. And then you could just search for like, places that are around that. Maybe it's like a restaurant, maybe there's a nice restaurant that you guys like around there, or nice little hangout spot, little Dunkin' Donuts, Panera Bread, I don't know, whatever. McDonald's, Burger King, all the things, right? So it's actually a pretty useful formula, but let's go ahead and jump into number 1 here. So you would just do 7 plus 9 over 2. 7 plus 9 is 16. 16 over 2 is 8. Okay, halfway there. Now, I like to do the x's and the y's kind of like separate. I don't like to try to use the whole formula like how they have it in the book, so I just do it again for the y's. Well, what are the y's? The y's are 4. Now, this is be careful. It would be technically plus, right? But if I plus a -1, that's the same thing as minusing. So yeah, sometimes you are going to be subtracting. When you add up two numbers, if you're adding up two integers, sometimes you're not really adding. And that's why integers are sometimes a little tricky. But just remember, if the signs are different, then you're subtracting. If the signs are the same, you're adding. When two signs are right next to each other, it's like you're multiplying the signs. So then you would, apply the multiplication division tricks. Plus plus makes a plus, minus minus makes a plus, plus minus makes a minus, minus plus makes a minus. Okay, so then we'd get all of that. So that's just going to be 4 minus 1, which is 3. And 3 halves can't be simplified, so that's it. That would be the answer. You would just put it all together into a point, 8, comma, 3 halves. And that's it. That's the answer for number 1. And that's all you do, really, is you just find the average, just like that. So let's do it again here. So it'd be 8 plus 0 over 2, which is 8 over 2, which is 4. Not bad. Negative 9 plus 5 over 2. Negative 9 plus 5. This is again with that integers thing, right? So negative 9 plus 5 is negative 4 over 2, which is negative 2. So altogether, the answer would be 4, comma, negative 2. And some teachers don't care. I would say most teachers probably want the answer written as a point. Some teachers might want you to put like x equals y equals, but I think most teachers want you to put it as a point because that's what it is, right? It's the midpoint. It's a point. So you would want to write it as a point. All right. Next up here, so 1 plus 1 is 2. Divided by 2 is 1. Because, shocker, the average of 1 and 1 is 1, right? When you want to find the average, you're finding out what number is between those two numbers. Well, what number is between 1 and 1? 1. There's no number between 1 and 1. 1 is the number between 1 and 1. So it's kind of a weird question if you say it like that. But yeah, so the average of two of the same number is the same number. So just keep that in mind. You don't have to waste your time next time you see one like that. Negative 7 plus negative 12. We are actually adding those because they have the same sign. It'd be negative 7 minus 12 if you got rid of the double signs in between them. But you are adding. So that would be negative 19 twelfths. And again, if you get an odd number, you don't have to simplify that most of the time. Unless your teacher is crazy and they want you to write, like a mixed number or whatever. But other than that, you would just be done. So that's it. Negative 19 halves. All right. 0 minus 4 is negative 4 over 2 is negative 2. 4 minus 12 is negative 8 over 2 is negative 4. Right? So I'm starting to skip that initial step of having to add or subtract and just going straight to it. I'm going to start doing that more and more as we go and start getting the answer a little faster. So negative 2, comma, negative 4. Okay. And the other thing you can do too is you can look at the answer and see if it makes sense. See if that makes sense. Well, yeah, negative 4 is somewhere between 4 and negative 12. And negative 2 is exactly between 0 and negative 4. It's a little easier to see that one because the numbers are not so far apart. Okay. Number 5. And we're going to start using some color here. Let's use blue. So negative 2 plus 4. Or sorry, negative 4 plus 2. Has some dyslexia there. Negative 2. I did it again. Negative 4 plus 2 is negative 2. Over 2 is negative 1. Okay, and then 2 minus 3. Oh, I said I was going to do that first step in my head. Brain farting right now. 2 minus 3 is negative 1/2. And that's actually as far as you can go with that because it's an odd, so it won't divide by 2. So negative 1, negative 1/2. And that's the answer. All right, next. 5 minus 1 is 4. Over 2 is 2. And then 9s, right? So again with the 9s. So the answer is going to be 2, 9. The average of 9 and 9 is 9. Okay. Negative 7 plus negative 2 is negative 9 over 2. 8 minus 9 is negative 1 over 2. And that's actually the answer. Okie dokie. And I forgot to box this one in right here. There we go. Okay. Next. So 2 minus 9 is negative 7 over 2. Negative 11 minus 0 is negative 11. Also over 2. Okay. There we go. Then we've got the next set here. So we've got 4 plus 2 is 6 over 2. And you know what? The next thing I'll do is I'll probably just go ahead and start doing some of the other math in my head as well. So here's what you would do. You would say, okay, what's between 4 and 2? Well, 3, right? Or you could say, what's 4 plus 2? Okay, 6 divided by 2. Okay, that's 3. Whichever one's easier. Sometimes when the numbers are close, or if the numbers are nice enough, you can kind of just think about what number would be between the two numbers. What's between -1 and -7? Maybe -4? Excuse me, a yawn. Yeah, that makes sense, right? And the other thing you could do is you could say -1 minus 7 is -8 divided by 2 is -4. All right. Next, -4 plus 3 is -1, and then I divide by 2. And then -6, average of that in itself is just -6. Okay. Then we have 14 minus 7 is 7 over 2. We have to divide it by 2. And 0 plus 5, 5. 5 over 2. Got halves for both of those. And that's the final answer there. Oh, and it has to be in parentheses. Okay, 14 and 12. This is a perfect example of when it's actually better to think about what numbers between the two numbers. If the numbers are close, it's a little easier. What's between 14 and 12? 13. You could add them, right? You get 26 and then divide by 2, 13. And that math isn't that bad. But sometimes it's easier to actually just think about what numbers between the two numbers instead of taking the actual mathematical average. Here is the exception, -8, -1. That's going to make -9 and then over 2, right? So that's the exception because then if it's over 2, it's not as easy to think about like, oh, what number exactly between -8 and -1? How about -9 halves? Like nobody thinks that, right? So that would be a case in which it would definitely be better to use the algebraic average instead. Okay. Let's try something just a little different with some of these numbers here with 13. So what you can do is you can actually graph and figure out the midpoint that way. Now, this works out way better when you're using graph paper, so just bear with me here. But check this out. So -4, okay. And actually, I want to put this bar down a little further, maybe down here. Not super straight bars here, but again, this works way better when you're using graph paper. So bear with me here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2. There's -7, -2. And then -4, 12. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right about there. Okay. And I made an accidental mark there, so I'm going to erase that. Okay, so then if you do it that way, you just need the point that's in between them. Well, okay, so we just count the spaces now. Well, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 3 spaces, right? So 3 spaces, we would take half of that. Half of that would be 1.5 spaces, 1.5. So we're looking for something that's right there somewhere. And then what's half of the spaces between them going up and down? Well, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Half of that is 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Right there. There's the midpoint, right? And again, this is a little bit easier on a piece of graph paper, but you can still do it here. Highly recommend doing it on graph paper. I wouldn't actually want you to do this if you're not using graph paper, so just an asterisk on that one. I wouldn't do this for like every problem. If you wanted to check your work by just sketching a graph real quick, then maybe, but I probably wouldn't recommend working out any of these unless you actually have graph paper to plot the points well. So anyways, once you get to this point, you just count the spaces, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.5, -5.5 because I'm going left, comma, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that would be the answer. And we can check it using the algebra, right? So -4 plus -7 is -11 over 2, which is -5.5. Okay, good to go there. 12 minus 2 is 10. 10 over 2 is 5. All right, good to go. All right, so again, this would be a good method if you have nice numbers and they're not too far apart, so that way you can graph them pretty well, and they're not too big. So graphing is good, especially if you like to graph, if you would prefer to see the answer and do less math. It's a way to do less math, basically. But it doesn't work well if you have crazy numbers, like crazy fractions or crazy decimals or large numbers. Anything real big. So basically like small integers is what you're looking for this method to work well. And I'm not even going to try it on 14 because those are exactly what I'm talking about. It's crazy fractions. So let's look at this. So -1/9 plus 14/9. I'm going to be subtracting it 13/9. And then that's over 2, right? So -1 plus 14 is 13. We have the same denominator, so you can add them. Let's move on for right now. Well, actually, no, let's not move on for right now. When I do this, it's 2, which is 2 over 1. 13 over 9. This is keep, change, flip. Keep the top fraction, flip the divide to times, and then, change the divided times, and then flip the other, which is 13 over 18, which still doesn't simplify, but at least now we've got that answer for the x. Now, notice what happened here was, and this is going to happen every time. You're going to divide by 2 every time. So really what you're doing is you're timesing the denominator by 2. Taking half means multiplying by a half. Dividing by 2 is the same thing as multiplying by a half. So instead of doing that every time, all of that, just do this. -1/2 plus 4/3. That's a pretty gnarly fraction. Let's talk about how to put that together. Here's how you put that together. Make sure the negative is assigned to a number. All right, so let's say it's assigned to that 1 there. And then you just do this. You go multiply the bottom right by the top left. Multiply the bottom left by the top right. Multiply the bottoms. Boom, there we go. All right, so that's that. And that's just, remember this, I haven't divided by 2 yet, or multiplied by a half. So all I did was add the fractions up, right? -1/2 plus 4/3. All I've done is that so far. So this is +5 over 6, and then I still need to multiply by half, so I'm going to multiply by 2. 2 times 6 is 12. All right, so there's your 2 answers. And then if you wanted to write them as a point, which we've been doing the whole time, I don't know why I decided to stop all of a sudden. Boom, boom. Maybe because I didn't want to write all those fractions again. My mind was like, no, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do fractions. Okay, so let's keep going. We are halfway there. And then we've just got some of these where we've got an endpoint and a midpoint. So actually, you know what? For time's sake, because I'm a little bit short on time today, why don't we do this? Why don't we go ahead and actually we'll call it a day for this one. We'll call it a day for this one. And I'll put the link for the other video in the description of this one once I shoot the other video for this whole worksheet. But in the meantime, if you're seeing this as of, today, as of June 6th, June 7th of 2022, then I'm not going to have the other half out yet. But if you are next week, so 6/14/2022 or later, watching this video, then that other video will already be out, and I'll put a link for that in this video as well. But you can go ahead and look at the answers if you would like. You can go down here and see the answers. All right, and they do have them all in parentheses, and they all have them written as decimals. some teachers prefer decimals or fractions. If you're not sure which one your teacher prefers, you can ask them. Just ask them, yeah, decimals, fractions, do you care? And if you're allowed to use a calculator, I would probably just type it in and then get the decimal answer and write the decimal, because that's probably easier, right? And that's it. So here's the answers, even the answers for stuff that we haven't gotten to yet. Excuse me. So check it out. Let me know what you think. And if you like these free resources that I put out on YouTube, you can check out more free resources on my website, myersmathematics.com. And I have a bunch of stuff on there, stuff like these videos, and the worksheets that are completely worked out and done, and just tons of other stuff on there as well. So go check that out. Go check out my main free resource, which is called The 5 Math Mistakes Everyone Makes and How to Avoid Them. Go check that out on my website, myersmathematics.com, and I'll see you in another video real soon.